Well, these are live pictures from the Henops River, and this is on the N1. All right, we're getting a signal there. My colleague Kwazimanzi, SABC News, a camera person will zoom in. Take a look at that diver right now who seems to be signaling the tow truck to pull what has been found inside this river. He looks to be standing on top of the wheel of a vehicle. We do understand that possibly the vehicle that the 3 police officers whose bodies were found here in the Henops River, that is what is being pulled out of here now. Where we are, Juliet, and stay with us for a little bit longer. Where we are at the moment is the initial scene where the families had come, as I indicated earlier, after they came to Pretoria to come and identify the bodies of their loved ones after they had been missing for a few days. A number of divers have now gone in to assist, and heavy-duty machinery has now been brought in. There's a drone that's also hovering right over the river here, and that drone has been quite significant in assisting in this massive operation. So while the families had been here at the scene, when they came to identify the bodies of their loved ones today in Bloemfontein, as you would see on our screen, and I do believe that you also had those visuals up on the screen, the families are having a special prayer. And you can only but imagine what the emotions are at this stage, Juliet, because many questions had been raised about what happened to the vehicle that these police officers had been traveling in. This is a crucial part, Juliet, if you look right towards where that rescue diver is pointing towards, that certainly does look like a wheel of a vehicle that is peeping out of the water there. A signal for this tow truck to assist in the pulling of what is now expected to be a huge find in terms of this rescue mission. A little bit earlier on, a bit of a false alarm, you would recall, as we went to another location where yesterday the police had found or located a piece of heavy metal. Now remember, Juliet, as I said in the previous crossing, and I'll repeat again, these are very heavy flowing waters. So if you would locate that piece of heavy metal at one location in a certain hour, you're likely to find it in a different location at a later stage. And I do believe possibly that is what could have happened in this particular instance. As this prayer is getting underway, or is underway in Bloemfontein, I can certainly tell you, and without a shadow of a doubt, that the prayers of those families are hopefully going to be answered in the next few moments, because this vehicle would be key evidence, Juliet, key evidence to what possibly could have happened. What we also do know is that there'd been a firearm inside the vehicle, the VW Polo, that the police had been traveling in. Now, that firearm, if there was any suspected foul play, all right, there seems to be some movement. Stay with me, Juliet, on this one. There seems to be some movement. Something is being pulled. It's coming a bit closer to us. We will be able to get a much clearer view in the next couple of moments. I can see a little bit of movement from where the police divers were, and you can only but imagine how difficult this is, because it's been a couple of days now, and it being a couple of days with the heavy rains that we saw, was it last week? And yes, indeed, it was last week, and with the river itself that is consistently flowing, obviously so, you have any piece of evidence that might have flown from one area to the other. The number of police divers who've also now gone into the Henops River has certainly increased, and the crane, I'm going to ask my colleague Kwazimanzi if we'll just show you this crane to show you the extent of this operation right now. The extent of the operation is that this, not a crane, I beg your pardon, let me say a tow truck, yes. This heavy-duty tow truck that has been brought in, and it is the one that was assisting initially, in the search at our previous location, but it has now moved to exactly where we are at this particular stage. And if indeed this would be the prayers of those families are certainly going to be answered. The families, of course, in Bloemfontein at the special prayer, and they've been praying for the pieces of this puzzle relating to what happened to their loved ones to be somewhat put together. And this would be a very critical part of the piece of that puzzle. Because recall I indicated, now investigations, of course, yesterday, Juliet, you would recall that there was a front and a rear bumper that had been found of a vehicle. So investigators last night already had been investigating that rear and front bumper. They were checking the data dots to whether they would correspond with the VIN number of the vehicle, and that would have given them the idea that if indeed that rear and front bumper belonged to the vehicle that these police officers were traveling in. And now, as you can see, that diver is standing on top of he's way above the water itself in comparison to where his colleagues are. It is incredibly difficult. You can see the mammoth task that is unfolding before us right now. All right, here we go again. I do see what looks to be that wheel popping out once again. And I can see my colleague Kwazimanzi will show you. Here it is from this heavy-duty tow truck. All right, something is being pulled. All right, I do see a wheel. I do see what looks to be a wheel, Juliet. And the signal now from the police diver is for the operator of this vehicle to wind it up. In other words, to pull it towards this area. There is certainly some movement that is taking place there. And you can only but imagine, because in the wake of these police officers going missing, Juliet, there have been many questions asked about what happened to them. And remember, we did ask police, what case are they investigating at this particular point? And they did indicate that they were investigating a case. All right, something seems to be peeping there. All right, a much greater part. Juliet, stay with us. All right, we've got a much more clearer picture now. A much more clearer picture. All right, it certainly does look like, that's right, that is a door. That does look like the door of the vehicle, and that's going to be, it looks incredibly damaged at this particular point. From where I am at the moment, I'm not sure if I'm able to see. I'm going to see if I can't locate the police spokesperson at Athlenda Mate. I think she would be anywhere near next to me at this particular stage. And there you have it. All right, let me bring in Brigadier Athlenda Mate, who is the police spokesperson. Brigadier Mate, I think I'm entitled to say at this point, possibly what looks to be a vehicle, looks like the door of a vehicle. Okay, Brigadier, I know you can't confirm at this particular stage, but I think it does, to a certain degree, give us some hope that because now at least the divers have found something.
Look, I cannot confirm at this stage up until this whole object is out of the water.
Yes.
But what we have seen is one wheel. And yeah, we are seeing a structure that may look like the VW Polo that we are looking for. So we are really crossing our fingers. We are hoping that this is the VW Polo that was utilized by our 3 constables to travel back to Limpopo. So we are hoping for the necessary breakthrough and closure. So up until the whole vehicle has been removed and retrieved from the water, I cannot give a confirmation.
Brigadier, thank you very much indeed, and I do understand that you're proceeding with caution, of course, in this particular matter, and understandably so, because you'd recall that police, Juliet, had been searching several areas where we went to this morning as well, where they had initially detected the heavy metal, is not where we are making this finding at this particular stage. So indeed, Juliet, we've seen one wheel thus far. What we're looking at the moment does certainly resemble the structure of a vehicle. The structure of a vehicle, and once it's brought to the surface up a little bit more, what you're also seeing now looks to be the door side, one of the doors of the vehicle. And obviously, where it's been found, Juliet, is exactly where you'd recall when we broadcast on the day that the families had come to the scene, and where it's believed this VW Polo had rammed off the embankment here on the N1. And the Henops River, of course, is flowing underneath the N1 here in Centurion, and that is the exact location where we are broadcasting from now. And I can certainly tell you, while police, of course, are very cautious to confirm, we can certainly see what is unfolding before us. And I do hope our colleagues do have our breaking news strap on for us there, which will indicate, of course, that possibly this vehicle, and I say possibly only because the police at this stage are saying that they really do not want to confirm anything, but I can confirm that indeed that is a vehicle. We've seen the wheel, we've seen the door. It certainly looks to be incredibly damaged, and of course it's been stuck there for a couple of days now. And the mammoth task that has unfolded, it has certainly submerged at this particular point, but there is more pulling that is being done. You can expect this operation to be as incredibly difficult as we see it unfold live here on SABC News, given that the debris would have obviously trapped this vehicle underneath the water and trapped it to such an extent that it was not going to be possible at all with the divers and the machinery they would be able to handhold. It would have been impossible to get this vehicle out of here. If you've just joined us on SABC News, you're live from the Henops River, and this is where what is unfolding now is a vehicle being pulled from the Henops River. We've seen a wheel. We have also seen what looks to be the side of the vehicle, and at this particular stage, possibly the vehicle that the 3 police officers had been traveling in. And this is while the family members also, while that prayer service is taking place in Bloemfontein, they were also indicating that they were going to have discussions about the funeral services that were due, of course, to the preparations for those funeral services to get underway. And at this particular point, any news or any development pertaining to this particular developing story would be welcome. All right, we're also welcoming our listeners on SAFM who've also just joined us now. And if you've just joined us on SAFM, what we're seeing before us is that police rescuers as well as other rescue teams are now pulling a vehicle out of the Henops River, which we strongly believe at this point is the vehicle that the 3 police officers who went missing were traveling in. It is a mammoth task at the moment. What we have seen, and Sakina, I know that, well, Sakina, as we join you live on SAFM, and apologies, we do have a helicopter which is hovering over us at the moment. We welcome our listeners on SAFM as well. And all right, what we're seeing at the moment, it is becoming much clearer. All right, we welcome our viewers on SABC News as well as SAFM and other radio stations at the SABC. That vehicle becoming much clearer. Certainly looks to be a white vehicle. What we're seeing at this stage is a white vehicle. It's become much clearer, a white vehicle which is being pulled from the Henops. And I'm not quite sure at this stage if that is a door that we're seeing coming much closer to us. Juliet, stay on our visuals at this particular time. This is a developing story and a crucial part of the investigation that police have been probing for a couple of days now. Why don't I bring in, perhaps I could bring in, let me bring in Ndade. Let me bring you in, the Deputy Gauteng Police Commissioner, Ndate Kekana, if you could please, all right, if I could just bring in General Fred Kekana, who is the Deputy Gauteng Provincial Police Commissioner. Ndate Kekana, thank you very much indeed for your time. I think some hope that we're seeing now, because police divers, of course, have found certainly what looks to be a vehicle. It looks white. We've seen the wheel as well. And one of the police divers also standing on top of that vehicle. They are, as we speak, trying to get it out of the water.
That's correct, yes. I think a sigh of relief, it's now coming, and very positively so, because it's a relief, I think, to the family. It's a relief also to us as SAPS and the community at large, so that the people can get closure, the community can get closure, the families can get closure, and us too, as SAPS, we can get closure. It has been heartbreaking.
Yeah. So are you confirming to us that indeed this is the vehicle?
We will confirm immediately when it lands here, and the data dot people check certain things, and it's confirmed that this is the real one. It can be a VW Polo, but let's wait until it comes down. Our forensics people are here. They are going to do verification, and then I think after that we'll be in a position to give a final confirmation.
Yeah. And talk us through the mammoth task of having this operation. I mean, heavyweight material has been brought in, and the expectation was that if indeed the vehicle had been trapped under the debris, you would need this kind of machinery that we're seeing here in order to pull the vehicle out of the water. It's been incredibly difficult for this team of rescuers.
Yeah, no, it has not been easy, but what is pleasing is that various structures, we are integrated. You can see it's private business people, private security companies, our Tshwane municipality, and private people, including the local councillors of the area, and all the teams integrated. That's what brings us to this solution, because as SAPS on our own, we're not going to make it. But through the collaborative, integrated approach and support, this is what will assist in solving this dilemma which we found ourselves in, and I think even others in future.
Yeah, and this is certainly, as I've been saying, a crucial part of the evidence, because the questions had been about where would this vehicle be. A crucial part of the evidence in the sense that police did indicate they were investigating a case of culpable homicide, but of course you were not leaving any doubt for investigating anything else. So finding a crucial part of the evidence would definitely be something that you would welcome and would possibly put, the pieces of this puzzle together?
Yeah, no. When the police we do investigation, we don't do it with wearing blinds or blinkers. We do it with open mind and any other information as it comes through, and any other clues that people give, we always follow up and check everything.
Ntate Kekana, thank you very much indeed. Much clearer. There it is. Juliet, stay with us. Breaking news at this particular time, and this certainly is. This certainly is a vehicle that is being pulled from the scene at this time. And Juliet, I'm just going to pause for a second. Please stay on our visuals. Please do not drop our line. And I'll be with you in just a second. Let me just catch my breath for a second there. The vehicle itself, much clearer at the stage. In fact, I'm going to stay with you. It is so much clearer at this stage. We see the top of the vehicle. All right, it looks like the top of this vehicle looks to be, Juliet, I'm not sure at this particular stage. All right, it looks to be submerging once again. It's incredibly difficult for this team to pull this vehicle out. And of course, police, had been saying they will officially confirm once the vehicle itself has been pulled out of the water. They will confirm if this is the VW Polo that they have been searching for. I'm not sure if the top of that vehicle looks to be dark, but that perhaps could be due to weather conditions or it being stuck in the water for a bit of a while. I'm not going to speculate at this stage about what we are seeing, but that definitely is a vehicle that is being pulled from the Henops at this stage. We're also welcoming our listeners on SAFM. Thank you very much indeed for joining us for this unfolding story. And obviously the police quite cautious. The police had been quite cautious. I'm not sure if on the top of this vehicle it looks to be a bit dark, but we will only be able to confirm once it comes a bit closer. Because there had been quite a lot of speculation about possibly where this vehicle could be, where it could be found, and now we're getting a much clearer picture in terms of the discovery that has been made by these divers. The door of this vehicle looks to be white in color. It is coming much closer. And being pulled, of course, by this heavy duty tow truck that earlier assisted. There might be some hope for the families, as that vehicle, as you heard from the Deputy Gauteng Police Commissioner a bit earlier on, they only want to confirm once it has come to the surface. But certainly, at this particular point, the families would be watching. And the police, Juliet, as well as you, Sakira, on SAFM, the police were successful, to track the car by using, technology nearby the telecom tower, not too far from here, the cameras that are mounted near the bridge. Those are some of the details that we are getting, and that was also how what formed part of the police's investigation into exactly where they needed to look to find the vehicle that the police officers had been traveling in. We've got a much clearer view now. All right, if you're joining us on SAFM or the SABC News channel, as well as SABC3. We also welcome our viewers on SABC3. I'm Griselda Lewis, and we're reporting live from the Henops River, where you see a number of these divers. They've been added since 7 o'clock this morning. 7 o'clock this morning, recall that the team had called off the search yesterday due to poor lighting. It had been dark, and the area itself had been quite dangerous, or is quite dangerous. So they needed to ensure that when they resumed the search this morning, they were going to have all the machinery that they needed, because remember yesterday, they had initially thought at the first location where we were this morning, that detected heavy metal, which was the size of the vehicle that the police had been traveling in. When we looked there, they came out of the waters, they did not find anything. Moments later, we traveled to what we would say was the original scene that we had come to, where the families had come to, of course, see where this car could possibly have gone off the embankment. And they were incredibly emotional at the time, and I cannot imagine what they're going through at this time as that service is currently underway in Bloemfontein. My colleagues, Kamugelo Fiekoi and others, are covering that for us in Bloemfontein, and I can certainly tell you they are watching with bated breath at this time, hoping that what is being pulled out from there is certainly going to be confirmed. Juliette, I'll pause there just for a second. If you could kindly just stay on our visuals, I will pick up in just about a second.
As you can see now, we are live at the Henops River, where a vehicle is being retrieved from the water. Rescue and recovery teams are working hard to bring that vehicle out of the water. Police say that it does look like a VW Polo, but not going as far as to say that it is the VW Polo that the 3 police officers who are now deceased were travelling in over the weekend. Their bodies recovered earlier this week on Monday and Tuesday, and 2 other bodies, one believed to be that of a groundsman at the Littleton police station, and another body believed to be unrelated to this incident. Police say that forensics will verify whether or not this wreck brought up from the Henops River is indeed that VW Polo that the officers were travelling in. But we'll have to wait for that confirmation right now. But it looks like it could certainly be that. But they'll have to wait for the whole vehicle to be retrieved before police can confirm. You'll remember that search and recovery teams had managed to locate bumpers believed to belong to a VW Polo yesterday, and then halted operations overnight, and then resumed that this morning, where they have recovered, are busy recovering at least, what appears to be a VW Polo, but a lot of work going on there, and not just the SAPS working on that, businesses, individuals, private entities, private companies, operators, search and recovery operators and teams helping to try and get that vehicle out of the river. An interesting thing to note is just how strong that water is flowing. A lot of people speculating say, how could a river carry away a vehicle? Well, if you look at how strong that river is flowing, and if there was more river, which is possible over the weekend where there were more rains, can certainly carry away a vehicle. Quite unbelievable to think that something as heavy as a car could be carried away, but those river waters are indeed strong. It only takes a few centimetres of water, 30, 40, 50 centimetres of water to carry away a vehicle if it's flowing strongly. But you can see those workers there hard at work trying to bring up that wreck. We can see it looks like the roof of the car has been torn off, possibly as a result of a crash. We don't know those details, and police will only be able to confirm that when they get that wreckage up and they are able to explore and have a good look at what they can see. They were also talking about those identification dots on the vehicle, which they will look at, and a lot of work will be done first before they can confirm if that is the VW Polo. And then spare a thought as well today for the families of those deceased police officers who are at a prayer meeting being held in Bloemfontein today. And I'm sure this is what they are asking for closure. And this will certainly go a long way in helping to give them closure on what happened. But investigations will continue for quite some time to work out exactly what happened on that fateful day. You can see those recovery workers working really, really hard to get bits of that car and a large part, it appears to be quite a large part of the wreck of that car up and onto land. A big tow truck with what appears to be a crane pulling up that vehicle as it's now been tied to the vehicle with those metal ropes. And we're going back to Griselda now. Griselda, back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Juliet. We're still live at the Henops River. This is in Centurion, and we're getting a much closer glimpse now as the heavy-duty tow truck is now pulling this vehicle from the water. It's been an incredibly difficult task as these police divers have, I would say, been working not exactly around the clock because they've had to suspend their operations once it becomes dark, and this area is quite dangerous. And you do have, of course, consistent flowing water, and as a result, they resumed their search this morning. We went to one location. And unfortunately we were not successful there. Now we're waiting for official word on whether what we are seeing before us. Remember, from where I am, I can see that parts of that vehicle appear to be white, but there are other parts that we might not necessarily, they look to be a bit darker, but that could be due to the reason that this vehicle had been submerged in this water for quite some time, and against the debris, or buried in the debris, and against these trees or these shrubs that you are seeing here at the Henops River. We also welcome our viewers on SAFM who are joining us at this hour, and you can see that drone also has been part of what has been critical to some of what has unfolded over the past couple of days, in particular with the discovery of the bodies of the 3 police officers. And of course, the chopper, which you can hear hovering just above me, has also been airborne for quite some time, or in the air for quite some time, just trying to monitor the situation from above. I'll ask my colleague Kwazi Manzi just to show you here also, just a little bit away from the vehicle, more police divers here. They're pulling from all directions, looking for the best possible area to pull this vehicle out from. And remember, Juliet, as the police a little bit earlier on in conversation with us, saying that if indeed this is the vehicle, once it comes out of the water, we have a thorough look at it, and then we indicate whether indeed this is a positive find. But certainly a glimmer of hope, I must say, a glimmer of hope that there has been a find, but what that find is exactly, Juliet, as soon as these divers and the rescue team are able to successfully pull it out of the water, can we then officially say, with all the speculation that we have at this particular time? Well, the success, I understand, of the visuals of this vehicle is also due to the removal of the debris and the large tree at the end street that was blocking the river and, it increased the water level. So once that had been removed, Juliet, earlier this morning, remember that was the first site where we were this morning, where the very same heavy tow truck had been brought in, had removed a huge tree, and that huge tree, we understand, had been somewhat of a stumbling block to where we are at this particular point. So once that had been removed earlier this morning, the water level subsided and revealed the vehicle once the search resumed. All right, I'm getting that from Councillor Wesley Jacobs. Thank you very much indeed for that. It was indeed due to a little bit earlier on when we had that tree removed from that a little bit earlier on. And you saw, the divers had moved from that particular part where that tree had been removed. We understood that that was one of the stumbling blocks to searching in certain areas, allowing the water itself to subside. And I understand due to that, perhaps that's how these divers were led into this direction, because recall when they had left the first scene, we did not yet have an indication at that particular stage that would be headed to a second location, and this is where this discovery would be made. All right, we seem to have come to a little bit of a halt at this stage, and I can only presume that's due to the teams themselves trying to ascertain from which area in particular they will be able to. All right, I do understand that the divers are now connecting the second cable. That is obviously going to assist in strengthening to pull out the vehicle from the Henops. And I must appreciate the councillor who is, assisting us, Wesley Jacobs, with some of this pertaining to why I just said a few moments ago, Juliet, we seem to have come to a bit of a stop. The divers are now waiting on the sidelines. It's because this second cable is now being connected to that particular vehicle to add strength to it. And in fact, I can actually see that at this stage. My colleague Kwazimanzi, I'm not sure if he would be able to at this stage, and it's a little bit underneath the bridge from where we are at this stage, but that is the second cable. The second cable is being pulled now, and that second cable is obviously going to allow the strengthening. There it is. That is the second cable that we're seeing right where those divers are. The second cable which is being put in, that's going to give strength to this particular operation to ensure that they're going to be able to pull it out. You can only imagine the debris that has this vehicle stuck. So you're going to need heavy machinery, you're going to need additional resources, you're going to need more than one cable. Now we're seeing two to actually pull this vehicle out of these waters. All right, if you've just joined us, we're live on the SABC News channel, SAFM, as well as SABC3. We do welcome all our viewers and our listeners as well. As we stay with these visuals, you can only but imagine, just take a look at the side. You can see the levels to which this water actually does rise to when there are heavy rains. And the reason why I mentioned this, Juliet, as well as our listeners, is precisely because every time there are heavy rains, we do experience major problems here at the Henops River. So you can see towards the sides where the divers who are standing on the sidelines are. It sort of tells you the levels to which the waters themselves itself is able to rise to. And having said that, that would mean that had this vehicle flown, or rather moved from the area, I beg your pardon, not flown. In fact, what is flying in the air is that helicopter. I beg your pardon, I've been speaking, I think, for about close to 45 minutes now. And certainly you can see the extent to which the waters do rise in this particular area. All right, so let me bring in Brigadier Athlenda Mate as well, and perhaps that will give me a bit of a break of speaking for 45 minutes, Brigadier. Brigadier, we're still clinging on to hope at this particular point. Brigadier Athlenda Mate, who is the South African Police Service spokesperson.
Definitely, we are crossing our fingers. It's day 7 of this particular operation. You'll recall that when the National Commissioner General Fani Masemola first met with the investigating team, he gave them a clear instruction, and that was find my children. So the first prize was to find our constables, and like I had indicated on previous days, that our investigation led us to this river. And on Monday already, we found the first 2 bodies. And on that scene on Monday, we found a groundsman that is attached to the Littleton police station, SABC groundsman. And then we found Constable Senoge, but we had to ascertain first. So the first 2 were found on Monday. We had to then suspend that search because it was already dark, but on that same day we found a Renault Kangoo panel van that belonged to the groundsman, SABC groundsman that is attached to the Littleton police station. We proceeded with the search. Our SABC divers, together with City of Tshwane, our special task force divers, were involved in this particular search and rescue teams, our K9 search and rescue, as well as NRSI were also involved in this particular search. They continued, and Tuesday morning they found Constable Linda, and by Tuesday midday we had already found a decomposed body along this river that we are yet to identify. Later on, you were with us, Criselda, when we made the discovery of Constable Base a few kilometers downstream from this particular river. So that was our main goal, to find the 3 police officers, but fortunately through that search, and which is quite disturbing, we discovered more bodies. So we had a total of 5 bodies. Still, this vehicle was nowhere to be found. Our investigation continued. Search and rescue teams did not give up. Today, we proceeded in the morning to another point of the river where our divers had detected a metal object. You'll recall that last night we had already found the front bumper as well as the rear bumper, and we were still analyzing and awaiting for the experts to confirm if whether or not these vehicle parts are linked to the VW Polo that we have been looking for. So today we woke up very early. Our divers were here as early as 6 o'clock. They got their marching orders, and we started our operation, as you would have seen, early this morning. But unfortunately, that was a false alarm. We didn't find anything. But what is key is that we removed a big tree that we think was a barrier and was causing a lot of water, to rise. Now, after removing that tree and that debris, water started flowing, and that is when, after we suspended that particular search, we regrouped. The search and rescue commanders gave instruction that the teams must split, the group must split into 4. So each group went to a particular point of the river, but there is one group that then came here and they started searching the river. Now, we noticed that the water had subsided at the time because of possibly the debris that we had removed together with those two heavy-duty vehicles. And as they started searching with the weight sticks are sticks that are utilized by divers to search for objects in water, in moving water, in rivers and so on. It gave them a positive of a metal object. But you'll recall that we didn't want to confirm at that time because we had had false alarms previously on a possible vehicle that has been found matching the description of the vehicle that we're looking for. So for now, what is going to happen is that once this vehicle is removed and it's retrieved from the water, we are awaiting a team from Tracker Unit that will analyze the dots of this vehicle. If the dots match the VIN number of the vehicle that we are looking for, then we can safely say that we have found the VW Polo that our 3 police constables were traveling in. So we are crossing fingers. We are hoping that this is the breakthrough that we have been waiting for. But I've just gotten off the call with the National Commissioner of the SAPS, General Fani Masemola, who has really expressed his appreciation to all the members that are here, including external stakeholders who really on Workers' Day have really came out in support of this particular operation, dedication, showcasing dedication, perseverance, not giving up. Remember, they would have given up in the morning and they would have called the search off, but they persevered and they continued.
Brigadier Athlenda Mate, thank you very much indeed. So we're getting a much clearer picture now. Juliet, thank you very much indeed, Brigadier Athlenda Mate, the spokesperson of the South African Police Service. A much clearer picture now of this vehicle. The second rope, Juliet, seems to be really assisting very greatly. You see two of these ropes that have been attached, one slightly at the back and the other. All right, a bit of a mammoth task, as you can see, trying to get it out of the debris there. Remember, at the earlier search where we were, the removal, we understand, of the tree by the very same heavy-duty equipment that we showed you a bit earlier on. We understand that had led to the water actually, subsiding a bit in order for, all right, we've got a much clearer picture of this car now, Juliet. We're going to ask you to stay with us here on the SABC News channel, as well as our listeners on SAFM. And you'd see every time they try to pull, it sort of takes a nosedive again. It's not an easy task at all. I see one of the divers there also carrying one of the parts of this vehicle. Just take a look there with this door actually opening on the one side as they try to pull this vehicle. That window is still looking somewhat intact, but most parts of this vehicle, and understandably so, given that it had been submerged in water for a number of days, and that would certainly, give us an indication, of the fact that it had been trapped under debris. It had also been trapped in in between some of these shrubs and these very heavy trees. All right, we're seeing the top of the vehicle and the sides of it. An incredibly difficult process for these divers who've been working around the clock and only suspending their search once it does become dark. And this wreckage that is being pulled at the moment, we heard from the South African Police Service, once it is brought to the surface, then the data dots, the investigators will try to match with the VIN number, and that will be the official confirmation for us that indeed this is the vehicle. The visuals we're also showing you on SABC News is of the families who've been waiting for any kind of news, who've been waiting for news on any further developments in this particular case, and that prayer service that they've been holding today, they're hoping would have yielded, those prayers would have yielded positive results. It keeps coming to the surface as they try to pull it out, and keeps on getting submerged once again, because you could also understand below the surface, underneath this water, it is not as stable, as would be. These divers have had to very carefully maneuver these waters to ensure that they themselves are able to carry out a very safe operation. We're getting a bit closer now due to the strength, I guess perhaps. We're seeing a lot more movement now due to the strength of what these rescuers have deployed. A second cable which is now pulling, pulling this vehicle to the surface. All right, we continue our special and live coverage from the Henops River, and this is where these rescuers continue to pull this vehicle out of this water. It's also going to be, it's not just as easy as having to pull this vehicle out of the water. There are certain verification processes that need to happen, before police, and you could sense the reluctance, of course you did, and understandably so, the reluctance from police to 100% confirm on the basis that there are comparisons that need to be done in terms of the VIN number that I spoke about and the data dots. That will tell you. Remember, this on the backdrop of also some of the discoveries that were made yesterday. It was a front bumper as well as a rear bumper that was found, and investigators had already begun their work last night already on those. Not forgetting as well, part of the find yesterday had also been the reflector jacket that we understand had the name bearing that of Constable Linda, and Constable Linda is one of the police officers that, of course, whose body was found here in the Henops River.
And judging by the tone of the police spokesperson, she was uninfluenced so much that she was reaching people to be responsible, because that was and that's
Right, if you've just joined us, this is live special coverage of the wreckage that is being pulled from the Henops River here in Centurion in Pretoria. Police, of course, very cautious at this particular stage to confirm whether it was the vehicle that the 3 police officers were traveling in. However, they do say that it's somewhat a glimmer of hope, and they're really pinning on their hopes on when this wreckage does come to the full surface, they will, of course, be able to do their investigations pertaining to that. All right, what we're also seeing there is some parts of this vehicle that are also being held now by some of the police divers. In fact, we did see one earlier carrying a part of this vehicle, completely damaged, as you can see, and understandably so, of course, because if it had flown, I beg your pardon, not flown, basically moved off this embankment, it is coming to the surface now. You can see some of the divers actually using their strength. They're using their hands to try and pull or to push, to pull the vehicle up. So it's not only just now the assistance of some of the heavy machinery, but can you imagine these divers that have been on different sites for a number of days now, and this morning haven't gone to a site where unfortunately we did not get positive news. It is quite imperative that this vehicle be brought to the surface, and it is exactly ascertained that indeed it is the car that those police officers had been traveling in. You'll also see towards, unfortunately again, submerged. This is a mammoth task which police have also indicated was not going to be possible without bringing in, and you can see one of the divers is holding a part of this second cable which was dropped down just a few moments ago, and he's moving it towards the side. Perhaps from where I am standing, they will try to plug it on the vehicle to such an extent that they are able to ensure that they're able to pull this vehicle to the surface to confirm. And certainly it looks like from the cable that they have, it looks like they're probably trying to attach that cable to a certain part of the vehicle. They've just toppled it over now and make sure that that cable would then be around a certain part where you'd be able to pull that vehicle from where it is currently located. They've made significant progress so far in comparison to where we were, I would say, about an hour ago. But it is still going to take a bit of a while to get this vehicle out of this water. You can imagine, because the water itself, not too much of a strong current, but of course, there are only experts who would be able to maneuver such a mammoth task. I see some signals also, all right, signals from the divers asking those that are operating this heavy-duty tow truck to pull. It will certainly seem at this stage what they were trying to attach, the elements that they were trying to attach to the vehicle, they might have successfully been able to do so, and now this tow truck would need to pull this vehicle. They're looking towards those who are operating this heavy-duty tow truck, and I think that's signaling that they can pull at this particular stage. Councillor, let me bring in Councillor Wesley Jacobs. Councillor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I mean, the importance of bringing in this second cable, which was obviously going to assist, in terms of the strength to pull this vehicle out of the water. As we can see now, the divers are still battling with it, understandably so, due to the debris and, due to the fact that you need heavy-duty machinery to carry out this task.
Yeah, I applaud the teams that are on site. I applaud all the EMS and all the helping hands that have assisted. from national government, provincial government to local, myself included, from Tshwane, representative of the city, helping and assisting when it came to the TLBs and removing of the debris of the tree, subsiding the levels of the lake, which helped and assisted the visuals of the vehicle. And I'm glad that we allegedly suspect that this is the vehicle. We hope and pray with the families that this is some sort of conclusiveness, that we can close this chapter. We will always remember them, but hopefully we can seal it by having some sort of conclusion with regards to the vehicle that is matching the VIN number to the suspected driver's vehicle.
Yeah, and the removal, you spoke about the removal of the debris, and a bit earlier on, I guess, there'd been some dashed hopes after we moved from the previous location, where initially the metal object had been detected, but a very critical part that we didn't understand was going to contribute towards what we're seeing now, or this discovery that has been made, is the removal of that tree which led to the waters themselves subsiding.
Yeah, so coming from a technical aspect regarding the Tshwane officials that were on site and gave advice, the advice was that we should actually come back to the point of impact where we suspect that the vehicle had gone into the river. That was the main advice that was given. Obviously, we can't rule out everything, but obviously we know this river well, we know the capabilities of it, and we didn't see that it is possible for the vehicle to have jumped over 4 or 5 different low-level bridges. We know the damaging effects of the river, but we can't expect the river to have decomposed the vehicle in such a short space of time. As we can see during the visuals, we can see that the vehicle has been damaged. We're unaware if it's been due to the fall or the decay during obviously the water that has been washing away parts and eroding.
That's right.
But yes, due to the fact that the Tshwane input that they have given, I think we fell short of listening to the experts that have been on the scene, and they did advise that let's take a look up here. I know the conditions was not conditionable yesterday when we wanted to obviously come and assist in finding the vehicle, because obviously due to the lack of light, obviously putting our EMS in danger, all the hazards and the risk factors, but we pulled through today.
And obviously, if this, is a positive find, this would piece together the puzzle of, what questions that we've been asking for quite some time. In the vehicle that these officers were traveling in is a critical part of whatever police would be investigating.
No, of course. So having this vehicle recovered, we'll be able to have conclusive evidence as to what happened, what transpired. All the departments, from forensics all the way up to the detectives, looking at all, not ruling out any possible outcomes, so that we can find a possible solution as to conclusively what happened there and what transpired. We have enough capabilities within our SABC system that we can actually conclusively find out what has happened here today.
Yeah, I mean, it's been hours for these divers. The only rest that they have gotten is at night time, when they've had to call off the search. And, having to, carry out such an operation is definitely not an easy task. In addition to the heavy machinery that's been deployed here, they've also had to use their own strength to try and lift the vehicle out of the water.
Yeah, and I applaud them for this. Everybody is enjoying a holiday today, but this is just another day at work for us. We are on the ground. We are here. We are here for our residents. We are here for our communities, and we are, no matter what, whether it be, any form of a holiday, be it any sort of day that is celebrated, we'll be here if the residents and the community needs us, especially our EMS and our police services.
And I mean, there'd been some hope yesterday as well, after there'd been the find of the 2 bumpers, the rear and the front bumper. But of course, investigators, as we indicated, need to connect the dots. When I say connect the dots, I'm talking about, yes, connecting the data dots, to the VIN number, which of course Brigadier Athlenda Mate says the very same thing would need to be done with this vehicle once it's brought to the surface.
Yes, that's correct. So we might have the same make, we might have the same vehicle description and color, but for us to conclude that it is in fact the vehicle of the deceased, we need to confirm that the VIN number matches that of the deceased vehicle.
Councillor, thank you very much indeed. We do appreciate your time at this stage. All right, we'll give you, we'll ask our team, as the chopper continues to hover just above, we'll ask you to please stay with our visuals, and once there is any further movement, you'll see one of the divers there. They are trying to pull from the direction where they are. All right, we'll ask you on SABC News as well as SAFM and SABC3 to please stay with our visuals as we continue our live coverage from the Henops River here in Centurion as rescuers continue to pull this vehicle. All right, we're also going to take you live to Bloemfontein, where the families of the 3 police officers have been part of a prayer service, and you can only imagine part of those prayers would be that this find that has been made, this discovery, will be positive, and they're certainly hoping that their prayers would be answered.